This is the Note Closer Show, where you get the latest developments in distressed note investing and learn the secrets of how you can control millions of dollars worth of property for pennies on the dollar. Get educated and entertained by someone who has closed thousands of deals and lives to support you in achieving the same. Now, here's your host, CEO of We Close Notes, Scott Carson.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. Welcome to this episode of the Note Close Show. As always, Scott Carson. Excited to be here today, and always excited to have a guest on who's doing some amazing things out there that can really bring a lot of content and tips to our audience across Note Nation out there. And I don't care where you're at in the country, we're often, especially in the note space, looking to buy debts outside of our backyard, or notes, and putting teams together in different areas. And we've got an expert on here today who's going to share some great insight and has been doing this not only for himself, but also helping other investors put teams together and really help delegate a lot of the sources and take a lot of that scare factor that might keep you up at night. You know, if you're an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours away from where your properties are and where your deals are, that can also be kind of a bit of a stress ball for you and add a little gray hair, take away a little hair. So we're honored to have my buddy Dan Butler. He's the co-founder of 6 a.m. Core Collective, the parent company CrestCore Realty. This guy is doing stuff on an amazing basis. He started as an early entrepreneur. He's been rocking and rolling, and he's also co-founded CrestCore Realty in 2012, manages 3,000 plus properties across Tennessee, Memphis, and other areas, and he's doing a lot of stuff with local and international investors. So we're honored to have you join us here today on the Note Close Show. Dan, how's it going today?
Good, man. Thanks for having me. Glad to be on the show. I enjoy listening.
Yeah, man, honored, glad to have you here too. So let's talk about that. I mean, 3,000 doors is a lot of doors. I'm sure you're not the only guy managing there. You got some team going. Could you kind of talk about what kind of size of team and people you have in place to manage that many type of properties and investments?
Wow. I think we have, well, it's hard for me to, sometimes it gets muddy on just with the collection of companies, but I think property management, we probably have 20 employees and then probably 40 remote team members.
Okay.
So people that are working remote, mostly in the Philippines. So probably 20 that are on site in the different, we got 3 different offices in Memphis, Jackson, and Dyersburg, Tennessee. And then we have, 40 plus that are supporting us remotely to do all the kind of the back office, back end stuff that we do.
Well, that's probably less than most people were thinking, which is a good thing because you've learned to delegate and really utilize VAs to help you do a lot of the heavy lifting for you, right?
Correct. Yeah, we've been on a journey on that, several different iterations, and yeah, it's been we finally got over that hump, like we all have of delegating, letting go. Especially letting go to somebody that's 4,000 or 5,000 miles away. That's a whole nother ball game. So that's been a journey that's been a lot of fun. We enjoy having them as part of our team. They're one of us. That's why we call them remote team members, not VAs. We kind of switched that a little bit just because they're on our team. They're part of. Their emails say CrestCore.com. Like they're not some third-party service or anything like that. So yeah, it's been great. They're we get on screen Teams meetings with them, video conference calls, all that good stuff. We do Traction. I don't know if you're familiar with Traction, Entrepreneur Operating System, and they've got rocks, they've got scorecards, just like everybody in Memphis and Dyersburg and Jackson. So we hold each other accountable and try to keep this business growing and moving forward.
That's really cool. Yeah, EOS is a phenomenal system to put in place. It takes a little time, but it's so well worth it in the long run for it to really kind of pull out, identify, I don't want to say weak links, but weaknesses to help making sure that everybody's doing rolling in the same direction and doing the most productive thing that they're really identified to do in the system. You know what I mean? Your businesses, right?
Yeah. Well, and one thing for us is I think we've kind of settled on, we track a bunch of stuff, but we're really pushing down to where every single team member has one number. Mm-hmm. So that when they wake up to go to work, they know that one number, they had a successful day or not such a successful day. And then your rocks and your scorecards behind that, or your rocks behind that, if you're not getting that goal, that we need to hit, they're putting stuff in place to hit it. So that's been a fun journey. But like you said, it's been a ton of work, man. It's not just, flip a switch and make some numbers up and off you go. That's not what it is, man. It's a grind, but I think it's every entrepreneur should consider it. Anybody that's trying to build a business, whether it be a note buying business or property management, it doesn't matter. You got to have these systems and processes, and EOS is one of the key components for us.
Mm-hmm. Now, when you left corporate in 2014, how many years have you been working in real estate before that, or did you make the jump cold turkey?
That's a great question. Yeah, I started in 2001 buying rental properties while I was in manufacturing operations. And so I did a dual path for, 13, 14 years where, I was working nights, weekends, lunch breaks on the rental properties. And then during the day, I was focused on making plants run efficiently, profitably and all that stuff. So it's part of my story. I think it's what led me to, be able to quit and just keep that W-2 as long as I could while I was building something. So yeah, definitely a long journey on that, but it was worth it.
Now, before you left, were you already utilizing virtual teammates, or you were doing a lot of that stuff yourself up to that point?
Yeah, I mean, my partner and I, we were up in 14. It was just he and I, and,
wow.
and I think we just had a couple of people back then, so we were doing a ton of the work. That was one of the reasons we started a property management company. Was we had our own portfolio, and we were doing leasing calls, maintenance calls, managing contractors, paying invoices. We're like, man, if we're going to ever build something that's sustainable without us, we got to do something. So that's what we started managing for others. And when we did that, it created some fee income, to pay for somebody to manage ours as well. The downside of that was we were highly leveraged with people from local, employees, and it was hard. And property management, I don't know if you read, you just Google it and Google profit margins, property management, and you'll see it's one of the lowest, in the industry that you could pick is property management and profit margin. So having the virtual side of it, years later helped us hone that in and get our profit margin back. Mm-hmm. And also I kind of equate it to like the military, like in Memphis and Jackson, Dyersburg, we have the officers, and then we got the troops, in the Philippines making things happen. So we got strategic thinkers, goal-oriented vision. That's what we have at the office. And then we got the tactical, get after it is kind of our virtual side.
Mm-hmm. Now, I'm willing to bet that you and your partner's families were probably a big cause for wanting to outsource a little bit. Imagine, like if you're like any other type of investor out there, we're all a lot of control freaks. We got to keep our thumb on the pulse, right?
Right.
And it's hard to delegate that aspect unless B, you're just burnout. You got the family, like, hey, every vacation is you're still on the phone taking phone calls and things like that. We've all been there, done that. So what were some of the first things, thinking back here, that were the things that you offloaded your plate to your virtual team that really made a big impact? And it may not just be profitability, but maybe a little quality of life, or allowing you to sleep a little bit, or really get things done on your end that you maybe put on the back burner.
So the biggest thing that I would say is we were always putting processes in place, and they would last as long as that employee or as long as we kept our thumb on that employee. When we added the virtual, they really want guidance, and they want written documentation, and they want, to be held accountable. This is how I do this job. And so the repeatability, the sustainability of your standard operating procedure shot up for us, because it's kind of like the Titanic, that's what it felt like. You try to put these things in place and you're poking holes, and then a new hole show up and you're just reactive. And so with the virtual, we were actually able to add more people on a person per unit count, if that makes sense. Like there's industry standards of how many people you should have per 100 units or whatever. And so we were able to reduce that. So we have actually more coverage per unit than we did before. So that allows us to not miss any of the things that would get missed in normal property management operations, because there's some, you're talking about transactions and moving parts, property management and maintenance part of it. There's there's thousands a month. So versus like owning notes, or we have a lending business, and that lending business, the P&L is one page and it's like money out, money in, a couple employees, and that's it. You know what I mean? Like it's pretty clean. That's, you know, and that, I think that's, you know, that's a whole nother story, but I think that's why we're in the lending business is, you know, all these other businesses allow us to be in the lending business. So we kind of have to have both for us to exist. But anyway, just a side note there.
No, and I think it's so relevant. I mean, it's exactly relevant because I think obviously we as real estate entrepreneurs, we're doing a couple of things to make things happen. You know, I'm primarily in the note space, but I still end up with property, still end up with REOs. I still got to work about getting those properties sold or keep them as rentals in the area. So we're always constantly juggling 2 or 3 balls. It's when you start juggling 4, 5, 6, and then not only just yours, but other people's at the same point where you can really, stuff gets dropped, right?
Well, yeah, and I think where things get dropped too is, and this is something that took several years, you know, and I'm trying to teach my kids to think differently than I did, as far as like, I just would grind it out, you know, like I would just do it. And then you look up your day and you realize how worn out you are. And a lot of it's because you spent the day doing stuff that, number one, you're not good at, or number two, you hate doing, but you just do it because you're there and you're the business owner, or, you know what I mean, or the manager or whatever. But that doesn't mean you have to, you know what I mean? Like, so some of it's self-awareness to realize, wait a second, if I offload, you know, these things, my life is going to be so much better. Even if it costs me a little bit of money, now I can put on the stuff that I'm really passionate about, that I love to do. Your business is actually going to thrive and probably make more money, even though you just spent, you know, say $20,000 hiring a virtual employee, for example. You've delegated stuff that just, you know, you don't like, but somebody else, you know, if you pick the right person, they love it. Does that make sense? Like, accountants for a reason. Like, you don't put an accountant on a call center phone line. Like, that just doesn't, you know, like you can envision that, right? It would be the worst thing ever.
Be the worst thing and the most overpriced assistant ever.
That's right. That's right. So, you know, we've just tried to learn those lessons is my point. So.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail right in the head there, talking about how if you're doing something that you don't enjoy, it is physically draining. It can take the energy away. And that's, you know, we always say that to people, hey, the most important hire isn't you, it's your first assistant to take a lot of that stuff off that's draining of you. And yeah, you may pay that first assistant 20, 30, 40 grand, depending on whether they're there locally or remotely, but it's the most valuable hire you can have, because now it allows you to be in the most productive person on your team, hopefully, to go out and really do those income producing activities, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll tell you what, you know, we've been doing the virtual thing for several years now, and I literally just took the deep dive into having my own personal virtual employee who's living in my email, that's helping me keep my charts up that I have to report on every week, you know, and setting my calendar. And, you know, I can't tell you how good it is to say, I can be on this show and know that my email's being watched, and then I'll have a quick summary of anything I need to worry about. You know what I mean? Like, and so it's been you know, I talked about this earlier on another show, but you know, we eat our own cooking. So I want to be able to eat my own cooking, and do this experiment with myself to show that I can be exponentially stronger by offloading some stuff and having somebody help me on the back end. So that's been very helpful.
It's like having your own personal guardian angel watching over your shoulder, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Keep me out of trouble. That's right. So,
well,
and you know, if you look at, go ahead. No. So we use Culture Index. I don't know if you're familiar with that. It's a behavior-based survey that we use to call out, you know, say people that we interview and hire for. So the whole point is trying to put the right people in the right seat. So my personal, you know, my virtual employee that's helping me has a high detail, and me as an entrepreneur, I have a low detail. I can't stand details. I just want to solve problems and move on. So it's a good mix, right? She's keeping me, you know, elevated, keeping me up where I'm weak and where it was draining me. So like I can do the detail, but man, it'll take me twice as long as somebody that enjoys that detail. So that's what's been advantageous for me.
I think that a lot of entrepreneurs deal with that struggle initially, because if you've ever read the E-Myth, It always talks
Oh yeah.
about, the aspect of that. We as uppers, we do good in going out and being innovative and finding new things. If we've got to go back and be detail oriented or go back into the R&D side or the customer service side, it doesn't mean that we're bad at it. Just that means it's not our most effective. And that's really
Right.
a great analogy is a Titanic. You want to keep that ship moving forward versus it standing
Yeah.
still or going in reverse a lot of times, right?
That's right. Absolutely.
Now, you have done a great job not only managing your own teams and increasing the number of doors, but you've also put together systems and opportunities for other entrepreneurs to come on and be using your team too, correct?
Correct. Yeah. We actually staff virtual employees for some of our competitors locally, which is pretty cool. It's been fun to be on that journey of, and, just serving others and recognizing, when I first started out, say 20 years ago, I was real close to the vest, thought I had the secret sauce, and that, Grant Cardone really talks about it really well. I mean, it's just the hustle, the drive, the grind, the passion, the execution. We're none of us are smarter than the, you know what I mean? Like, there are smarter people, but if you just put us, face to face, it's the person that gets after it. So we've enjoyed helping our competitors get stronger by, supplying them with virtual employees. So that's been a fun journey as well.
Well, but that's also the more your team, your virtual team is working together, not only just work on your stuff, but their stuff, it's also builds a stronger team as well too. Probably a little bit of a stronger community too with your peers or competitors too, huh?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, we've definitely taken down the walls of that whole fierce competitor, like, beat each other up. We'll call each other and let each other know when a client's calling them about maybe, switching to one of us, or, you know what I mean? Like, because we really ultimately feel bad, or just maybe not feel bad, but just have the courtesy to give each other heads up. And so that's been a very good side part of all this, is just helping each other, like that, what is that, Givers or Takers? That book, that's an awesome book. I mean, it's one of my favorites, just always giving, always trying to help others, and not focus on what's in it for me. Like, if you do that, it's gonna come back to you tenfold. So
yeah, it's that total servant mindset. Given it does come back and give, and that's, I think so many people fail to realize that, or people come from, and look, real estate can be very cutthroat. Hey, you're not going to share leads, you're not going to share marketing sources because you want somebody going over and stealing your deal flow. And I'm still the biggest believer that there's plenty of deals going around, especially the market increasing. There's plenty of deals, but we're going to see a lot more deals here in the next 6 to 12 months, right?
Yep. I've been saying that. Yep.
Yeah, you and I both been saying it. I think real estate's overpriced for the last 12 months. Start getting ready to pull some money back and make those connections, right? That's
right. It's coming.
What are some of the things that you're kind of putting your team, your virtual team, starting to plan for? I won't say maybe the tsunami, but that rainfall of defaults, foreclosures that we know we're going to see here probably in the next, at the end of the year, probably not the next 60 days or 6 months, but after that, once the government figures out what the heck they're going to do and how things are getting bailed out with all the numbers taking place.
So, two things I would say that come to mind is on the businesses themselves. We've really said, hey, let's take this time to really tighten ourselves up, so, and with us working virtually, we're actually much more efficient. We don't have people coming in the office. It's super quiet. People are just working. So we're trying to button up, getting ready for when there is going to be expansion. The second part of that is, for ourselves and what we're coaching our clients, like, man, get your lines of credit ready, get your, cash available ready, because it's coming. Something's, I don't know when, I don't have that crystal ball, but you can look at history and just see, when you have times like this, there's a 12 or 18 month lag, but there's going to be the stuff that comes out of this on the note side, or foreclosures, or, short sales, all that stuff's coming back from 08. It's just, I don't know what the magnitude of it is. I thought collections and leasing and all that stuff, I thought we'd be almost shut down, and it hasn't done that. So, but you look at the hotel industry, we run with a guy that works at corporate at Hilton, because Hilton's based in Memphis, and they're 30% occupancy right now. 30%. You can't sustain. They were at the single digits, so they've climbed up, 3 times what they were, 2 months ago. But 30%, that's worldwide. That's a worldwide number, not just that's worldwide. 30% occupancy, crazy.
Wow. We haven't seen hotels on the distressed debt side for some time now. Now I mean, that's going to be the big thing that we expect to see that. And then
commercial.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Commercial office space.
Yeah.
I'd say college, student housing too, as well, is going to be hurt. I know I've got some buddies that they went away from the traditional apartments and went straight to 100% student housing. And I'm like, who's the bank on your debt so I can call and try to help it and buy the debt out at a cheaper price?
Wow. Yeah, that's going to be interesting. Like I said, I just think you need to tighten up. I'm watching every expense like I never have before. I'm challenging ourselves to say, do we really need this? And then, brokerage is figuring out how to market 10 times more than they did before. And knowing that if they keep sustaining that, trying to find those buyers in the houses now, think how coming out of that is going to be that much better because you created some systems and processes that can scale and then bring in the volume, when people are ready, they'll be ready basically.
Well, that makes sense too, because now's the time to be planting those seeds. If you've got a 60, 90, 120 day, 150 month ramp up to where we think things are going to end up having when that first round of forbearance agreements kind of come and due, and people have gone through their savings, they've gone through stuff, you've planted the seeds like, hey, being the place that they can turn to for help, for assistance, and either helping them, take the property down or getting it sold faster or working in, a variety of those retention strategies too for you is a good thing to keep in mind too.
Absolutely.
You being in the Tennessee market, Tennessee's been a very competitive market over the last few years. Would you agree to that primarily or no?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. It's, it gets a lot of national attention for price to rent ratios and these turnkey guys that, that we're friends with, that we don't do turnkey, so to speak, but we're friends with those guys. We manage stuff that comes off the turnkey from some providers. So yeah, those guys have done a really good job marketing and marketing Memphis, so yeah, it's been hot.
Yeah. Memphis is such a unique market too, compared to a lot of other, with being such a high percentage of rental units, correct? For the most part, it's a little bit above average. Nationwide, I've heard numbers where it's like 80-85% rental market. Is that still accurate or
so, yeah, great question. We're probably 55% rental in Memphis. So, but think about that. If you got so the national average is probably 35, 36. Let's do round numbers, call it 35. That's 20% increase. So we have 300,000 parcels in Memphis. So that's equivalent of 60 on an equivalent size market or, city. We have 60,000 more rental units than another city of similar size. So that just tells you, that's a lot of units. That's a lot of people investing. California, New York, all those guys are coming in here, moving money east or west to east and north to south. That's kind of how you see the money flow.
Well, and it's because I think property in Tennessee is, and we see the same things here in Texas, is a lot more affordable, and that you have a higher rent ratios compared to the West Coast and the Northeast. We talked about that before.
Absolutely.
You can cash flow something above a 4 cap, whereas if you got a 4 cap in California, you're going to slice your grandmother's throat for it. You know what I mean? It's kind of crazy.
Yeah, they're in 2 cap. In New York is like 0-1. 0 to 2. But I think the thing that we have to be careful for, and I'm sure the same thing in the note business, is like the people from California see these houses that rent for $600 for $25,000, and you're like, used to I would sell anybody anything just to try to help, but then you realize by helping them you're hurting yourself and eventually hurting them because the numbers just don't work like they think they're going to work. They think they're 20% returns, and sometimes they're single digits and zero because turnovers and late pays and maintenance and vandalism and all those things that come around with those kind of things. So, I just try to make sure people understand that going into it, but I think that's something that, you got to be aware of. And I'm sure the same thing with notes. You see a note and it looks so juicy, and if it's so juicy, you're like, there's got to be something wrong with it. You know what I mean? Like, there's got to be some, peel back the onion and figure this out a little bit more.
Exactly. It is a total rolling back the layers of the onion and uncover what's going on. Because we've had deals we thought were going to be modifications or reinstatements that turn into disastrous foreclosures as far as length and just pain in the ass borrowers that didn't want to work with. And those that we thought we'd have to foreclose on were some of the best, easily modified, easily reinstated deals out there. And it just depends. But that kind of brings me to a point. And you said this a little bit earlier about how quiet the office is. You've got people working efficiently and effectively. I'm sure you're spending time with your virtual teams identifying. You talked about, hey, they got one number, but also making sure that they can cover other things that you don't need to hire a local employee to do, that saves you on overhead and insurance and other things like that too, correct? And really kind of maximizing or filling that teammates' capacity cup to full level, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think that you know, there's two ways you could look at this COVID, you know, pandemic. It's like, it is what it, I just believe it is what it is. What are you going to do about it?
Yep.
So what are we doing about it? We're trying to say, all right, what are we never going to do again? You know what I mean? Like, we've had the office closed for 2.5 months. We have not had a single resident in this office. We haven't had a client in this office. We've signed now 160 leases in 2 months without anybody being here. You know what I mean? Like, all DocuSign and all that stuff. So we're not going back. You know what I mean? So we're just trying to say, you know, like, out of this kind of environment, you know, entrepreneurs thrive and come up with creative ideas. There's gonna be all kinds of stuff that come out of this that we should never go back and do, that should free us up. You know, hopefully, you know, I hope there's a balance too, and I'm kind of tangent, but that we use that time for our families and for ourselves and have some health around that part too, not just fill it up with something else. Does that make sense? Like,
it totally makes sense. And I think you hit the nail on the head there, Dan, but hey, what are you doing now that you can outsource that you never have to go back to doing again? Now you've freed up that time to do whatever you want to do. Spend time with the family, vacation, side hobbies, side ventures, focus on another niche of your business that you can capitalize on. Like you talked about, going to the lending side, going to the property management side, and all that other stuff is an important aspect to do it. Now, what are some of the things when you're looking, when your virtual teams helping out with the properties or leasing or things like that? Are they doing a lot of the marketing? Are they doing a lot of the tenant screening, maybe a little social sleuthing to make sure you got a better quality tenant in place versus just somebody off like a Craigslist ad or something like that?
So yeah, I mean, they're helping to syndicate to all the sites. They're putting it on Facebook, which has been a tremendous, apartments.com, you know, all that kind of stuff they're helping with, taking calls. So in pretty much all the businesses, they'll take a cold lead and turn it into a warm, and then we'll have somebody in Memphis that closes the deal for the most part. So yeah, I think it's a whole mix. I mean, anything, like I said, from a virtual standpoint, and I think, you know, with you being at home and working from home, can understand that, you know, like all of us now, like, they can do anything that you just don't need to be at that house or that apartment for. Anything that you don't need to, like, be inside and see a wall or whatever, they can do virtually. So it's opened up some people's eyes to say, wow, you know, like, you could, I mean, even bankers, I had a lunch with bankers the other day, and they were like, we're trying to figure out how to close loans and all that stuff virtually now as well. You know, they've been hesitant on the DocuSign and all that stuff. They've been that way for years, but it's made them, you know, open up and see.
And that's the thing, DocuSign, but also the virtual notary thing now, where it's, hey,
virtual notary, that's
you
right.
can bring a virtual notary
Watch
online.
it.
Yeah,
yep.
That's so awesome. And we just started implementing that too. Or having my virtual assistant, when we do send out loan mods or something needs to be signed, we don't send it via snail mail. We send out, you know, hey, a virtual or a link to that aspect. Say, we're not waiting for you we give you a day and you take 2 weeks. We want to get this done in 2 hours and speed things up as fast as you can. So it might cost a little more, but the money it saves you in the long run is so beneficial, isn't it?
Oh, and, you know, I was telling my attorney, one of our attorneys the other day, and I said, he was talking about that same thing. And he's like, but, you know, I'm just worried they're going to try to knock me down on cost. I'm like, man, take $50 off. You know, like, I was challenging him, like, just because you got the speed, you can go do something else. Like, don't think of it like I'm going to have to reduce my fees. Look at how many more you can do or what other things you can work on. You know, like, don't think of it that way. And, like, don't have anybody back in this office ever again is what I was pushing them on.
Yeah,
you know, that's an extreme. But
I will always make the analogy. Yeah, you can save $50 by doing your own oil, or you can take the 2 hours to go fishing. I would rather go fishing.
That's right.
For fun.
That's right.
Oil, right.
Oh yeah, the last time I changed the oil, I forgot. I left the two the gaskets. I left the one from the old one with the new, and drove off my truck, and all of a sudden I saw this oil just all through the driveway on behind me. I'm like, okay, maybe I wasn't supposed to be the one that changes my oil, and I haven't changed my oil since. So that was 2 hours of cleanup, to your point, and just, you know, who knows how much oil and damage to the environment and everything else. So you got to realize, yeah.
That's awesome, Dan. I mean, we've all done stupid shit like that. We should have had somebody else do for us. But
man,
you guys, you've put together a package or a team to help investors out there. So if you guys are listening and dealing with a lot of issues or pulling your hair out because you're trying to do it all, you've lost that quality of life. You're looking for love in all the wrong places as you're unclogging toilets and doing things like that. Dan, how can people, because you've got a team, you've got systems in place for people to be able to take advantage of all the work you put in. Let's talk a little about that, what you can offer up.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, we, on the virtual side, we can offer up, we sit down with clients, we find out where their pain points are, where they need the most help. We get them to tell us what the top 5 things they want somebody to work on. And then we can take those duties and we can recognize what pattern of a person. We have the profiles I talked about with Culture Index. We'll go find those people, take 100 applicants, get it down to those 2 and say, here you go. And, you hire one, and then we have a coach behind them that's helping you extract from you, like what you need done and how that process should flow. And then they're holding that employee daily to the accountability to, they have to report every day what they did, how many they did, or what, and weekly and monthly and daily reports. So it's been a very successful, venture on that side, just because, I think that's our value add, is that screening, that coaching, that ongoing, back end support to make sure that you're successful with the person that you've hired. So that's been a fun journey to see others have relief when they've been able to offload stuff that helps them focus on bigger stuff, so that's been good.
What are you seeing as far as is there minimum hours that you're putting teams together for people that they need to kind of expect on? Or you're not saying it's just 5 hours, but you're probably looking at least 10, 20, 40 hours. What's kind of the bandwidth?
It's funny. Most people say, man, I just don't know about 40 hours. And they'll start out, well, and we recognize that. So we'll do 20 hours. And then within weeks to a month, guess what? They're at 40 hours.
Yeah.
They're full time, because they just realize, oh, wow, this is working. What else can I offload? And what else can I, to your point earlier, like, hey man, if that frees up an hour or 2 at night, then now I can just do what I want to do or be with my family, or, you know what I mean? Like that might be worth, $20. You know what I'm saying? Like, it just, you got to get over that hurdle and realize what your time is worth. I mean, there's one podcast with Naval that I've listened to that's really good. It just talks about, at some point you get in your life where you got to, every stage of your career, you got to see what is your time worth per hour. Just break it down. When we first started out of college, it was probably $20 an hour or whatever. At some point, and his extreme example was he ordered something from Amazon. It was the wrong size. He just threw it away because it wasn't worth his time to go package it up, go to the UPS store. He would go make $1,000 doing his business versus go spending that hour sending that shirt back. Does that make sense? Like, so you got to be thinking those types of weird, different angles and mindset versus, being frugal or whatever you want to call it. You got to break that barrier. Does that make sense? Like, cause I'm one of the tightest people you'll ever meet, but I had to get over that hurdle and say, I can add more value. My time per hour is worth more doing these 3 things. Strategic coach, Dan Sullivan, if you're familiar with him, I'd recommend your listeners to hop on that bandwagon and listen to a lot of what he says. And it's been really good for me to figure out my 2 or 3 strengths that if I'm in those zones, I could do it all day long and just take things to the whole next level. So,
and we always talk about that as real estate investors. We look on return on investment, ROI, right? But but a lot of investors that are doing it all themselves, when they look at really what their ROT, their return on time, they're making less than flipping burgers at Whataburger would pay or McDonald's would pay, and so
That's right.
That's one of the big things I talk with the listeners out there. Like, if you want to make $100,000 a year, figure out what your hour is worth, and that's your parameter. Anything that's going to cost you less than that, delegate it. Anything that costs you more, try to do it yourself, or focus on those activities for the most part to help you identify the things that you don't need to be doing, like changing your oil or filling out your calendar if you need to, or other things like that. So,
yeah, I mean, I've always used that phrase, when you're looking at this: automate, delegate, or eliminate. Everything you're doing, you should be thinking, can I automate it, delegate, or eliminate? If you can have that mindset, that will help you tremendously too. Because I was right there with, what you're describing. I was picking up signs, I was checking signs, I was cutting grass, I was picking up rent. I mean, you know what I'm saying? I was just all that grunt work. If you ask me, one of my biggest regrets, it wasn't leveraging others faster.
Yeah.
I mean, that's, so, and you can do that, what my partner, I call low cost experiments. Like you were talking about that 20 hours. So when you call it $10 an hour, just for simple math, at 20 hours, was that $200? So $800, and you try it for 3 months, that's $2,400. Try it for something, I'm just saying that example, try that for 3 months and see, wow, did I get $2,400 worth of work and time and all that stuff? But if you never do it, you'll just get stuck in that grind, and you'll keep on, just doing that hamster wheel, So.
Well, and it's the thing, you find one deal that makes you $20,000, you just pay for that. You find one investor that brings $50,000 or even $20,000 to the table for something, you just made up for it. And imagine now what they're doing, as you work your numbers backwards to figure out their KPIs, their numbers, as you talked about, the traction EOS, those specific things. If you can implement some of those things, be like, why didn't I do this a whole lot sooner, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think people look at what they're sending out the door versus what they can bring in. I think you got to flip that. Think, what can I bring in? You said it really well. Like, what can I bring in if I outsource this and focus on bringing in more? It's just one more deal, in your example, like for a wholesaler, like bring in 2 more deals, or, I don't know what the profit margin is on a note, but 2 more notes a year, and you paid for that person. You're like, oh my gosh, wow, 2 more notes. I only have to do that once every 6 months. I mean, surely I could figure that out. Does that make sense? Like,
totally makes sense.
If you break it down in simpler terms, it doesn't become as an overwhelming,
Exactly. Where most people are like, oh my God, I'm going to add $800 to my bottom line each month for having to hire this individual. Well, that $800 that you pay, if you don't pay, you're missing out on $50,000 or $100,000 or $20,000 or $10,000 or even $2,000 in profits if it's worthwhile there for you. Dan, what's the best way for our listeners, as we kind of wrap it up here, best way for our listeners out there to connect with you, to talk with you or your team about bringing on the virtual team, or expanding that and adding somebody to their team?
Yeah, I mean, the website's www.coreassist.com. My email is dan@coreassist.com, and my cell is 901-289-7888. Awesome.
We'll have all that in the show notes. But coreassist.com is the main website right there, Dan, again?
Yep, absolutely.
Core Assist is spelled exactly like it sounds. We'll have all the links out there for you. Man, it has been awesome to have you on the No Close Show. Thank you for bringing us such knowledge and nuggets and sharing experience. God knows we don't always like to say about the times when we were our own indentured servitude. But, a lot of us start off that way. We have a passion. We are control freaks. Nobody can do it as good as I can.
Yeah.
And, hey, you don't need it as good as you. You need it 70, 80 cents on the dollar as good as you do to get that full thing, to get it done and complete and allow you to focus on what you need to do. So thanks for being a part of the No Close Show today, Dan.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I enjoyed it.
Awesome. All right, guys, that's going to wrap it up for this episode of the No Close Show. Go check it out, coreassist.com, and learn to start delegating. Start making your time more valuable by delegating and eliminating the things that just suck your energy or take away your profitability. Go out and do that, guys, and we'll see you all at the top. Bye.